invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Bula invaders. Trish still in Fiji, still having a great time. Don't want to leave or come home. Sorry, I do love you guys, but it is awesome here. My thoughts on Targets, 1968. It's a disturbingly prescient movie. That's sort of what I got from the outset of it. And it's very well done, very Peter Bogdanovich. And I don't know, there's some surrealism to it that I think you could really lean into. I feel like the colors are very interesting, and you could really make it kind of a dark Twin Peaksy type thing if you were to remake it. I do have such a love for Boris Karloff. If I didn't before, this movie really cemented it. Because he's in this whole movie, like, he is a bit cranky, but he seems like such a lovely man. He just wants to get out of it and retire and just sort of be left alone to his own devices but he sort of lost confidence in himself to do the good roles, as he says at one point. But he definitely has it in him. But at the very end, he's just really, that power that he has always had is pretty intense and amazing. They really do a good job of showing that this guy is a jerk out the gate. First look, you're like, oh, that guy's really an asshole. The gun shop scenes were kind of interesting, whereas I thought at the beginning, the receipt would come into play later. Like, they do make a big deal of showing the guns falling down and why they wouldn't have a bit about it where I know they're running out of time, but trying to find out or knowing who he was before they even got there, because they didn't really do that throughout the movie. There should have been something in there. I feel that was like a missed opportunity if there was something that we could do in our remake. I really wish I had the boys here. They're great to bounce ideas off of. Because they did make a big deal about the receipt at the beginning, and I was definitely sure something about that should have struck home and made another part of the story kind of come together. I recommend everybody kind of watching this movie. It's really an interesting one. They had the newspaper article where they said young kid goes into a supermarket, kills 6 people, and this was 1968. So that really just makes you think that that desensitization has been around for so very long. And the sub part of the article is like, honor student was depressed. Well, yeah, but I mean, depression doesn't have to mean that you have to kill a bunch of people. There's a lot of depressed people who don't do that. I think, honor student was depressed and largely an entitled asshole. So that should have been the article. Because depression doesn't outright make you kill people, but sociopathy does, and so does psychopathy, which they really do lean into with this guy. I think, remake 2 is he's definitely he shouldn't be married. I feel that's the main point. He should still be living with his parents on forums all the time. Very kind of incel, life is unfair. I should have had more, but he lacks capability to do better in life. Which a lot of these people who do go shooting is, oh, life is so unfair and the world is stacked against me. And it's like, no, you can't handle life very well. Sorry. If you can't figure it out, try and figure it out. Make some fucking effort. I was also kind of hoping that the father would take him out, because he sort of disappears from the film at a certain point and doesn't come back because he kills his mother and his wife, and there's really nothing. His father doesn't really show up after that. His father, when he has that reaction to like never point a loaded gun, it was really quite cool, because as a child, that was really drilled into me. Like I grew up on a farm. Guns were part of what you used. Gophers were a pest where horses or cattle would step in their holes and they die. You'd have to kill them because their leg would get broken. But that's exactly the reaction that he would have to anybody who would be pointing a gun, loaded or unloaded. You never point the barrel at somebody. It was very much a very hard rule that would never, that barrel only goes at what you're going to shoot at, and that is it. And if anything is beyond that you don't want to shoot, you move because you don't want to shoot what's beyond it. Like, there's always the possibility of missing or a ricochet or anything, so you just never, ever do that. The guns were quite interesting. The butt of the gun had the rods. We had rods when I was growing up in Alberta, but it was just under the barrel where we'd load that there. So just fun fact. And would go out and shoot cans with my dad. It was very different, but I'm not the psychopath that this guy is. Really, really crazy. The foreshadowing where he takes the gun in and turns the light off is really fascinating, because you think he's going to murder everybody in the evening, but it's just so much more jarring when it's in the morning and it's daylight, and like he's just been sleeping by his wife all night and his mom's been in the house. It's really good. I love that idea that it's the darkness. It does this type of thing doesn't happen in darkness. It happens in full view, and it also happens with a lot of buildup. This is very consistent for a lot of the mass shooters, is when they look back on it, there was a lot of threats brought up by these guys. This guy, he didn't have a lot. Like, if the internet existed in 1968, there is no doubt that this person would be on forums and talking about it and talking about how he has to fix the world. But it's just an incredible movie. There's a couple of, like I say, with the father, there's got to be some resolution there. So there's a couple of loose threads that need to be tied up. I would love to make it now and figure it out. I'll leave it to the guys to get more of the finer details, but those are just my 2 cents about how I feel that this is working. And also cell phones at the drive-in. The cell phones would really change a lot of this movie, like the communication at the end with people. I don't know, you might have to make it a period piece again, just because the cell phones would change a lot of the dynamic in the final scene. So there's that, because they're just not communicating with each other. That's how I feel about Targets 1968. So I will get on to my casting. So for my director, I came to this simply because of the surrealistic look of the whole movie, with the colors, like the one blue room that's just all one color. That's always been a very jarring stylistic choice. So David Lynch actually came to mind, because I feel you could lean into a very Blue Velvet, surrealistic sort of note, because it's so real now. Maybe having that is just having it be a bit more surreal. I don't know if it would be like washing it out and not getting the impact of it, or it would really show how bizarre the whole world is that this is happening. But I feel maybe David Lynch might be able to add a different twist on it. So for my Byron, I went with Eric Peterson, who plays Oscar Leroy on Corner Gas. And I have an alternative if this takes a while to do and he ages up, Peter Dinklage. Because of the slapping scene at the end of the movie, I'm positive the Game of Thrones showrunners saw that and fashioned Tyrion slapping Joffrey in exactly the same manner. Because that, without a doubt. And then for Bobby, but I put asshole as the guy. I get very opinionated with these things. What's funny, if I could get him at the right age, the guy's a dead ringer for Matt Damon. That's the first thing I thought. But I need to get the guy from Call Me By Your Name, Timothy Chalamet, I think would be a really good person to do this role. Like, he's young enough, sort of at the right age. I could see him being very disaffected and work very well. Sammy, the director, Richard Ayoade. I love him, and he's a director, so it would be interesting watching him be an actor acting as a director who's a director. And he would bring a different, I think, dimension to Sammy, and he's very good at, there could be kind of like, there's comedic elements with Sammy as well, especially the scene where they drink all night, and the poor kid just can't handle it. These youngsters, they just can't keep up with the old boys. For the one agent who keeps pressuring him to do stuff and meets them at the restaurant, Ed, I have Mike Wilmot, who's played largely the same role in It's All Gone Pete Tong. And I think he would be very well suited for this role. Jenny would be Gemma Chan. She's been really kind of coming out in like a lot of movies now. I first saw her in several British TV shows. Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and also she has a bit in the IT Crowd, also with Richard Ayoade. And for Kip, the sort of hipster dude, Seth Green seems to have been born to play that role. I know he's kind of my age now and a little bit older, but I still think he looks kind of youngish enough that he could totally pull that off, and it would be amazing, because that's sort of the comedic part of it, especially when Byron is like, all these questions are boring. And I think, as you've heard our interviews here on this podcast, we like to at least have very non-boring questions, or get them engaged in telling stories about their life. And you just have to, the questions are just a beginning to let the interviewee open up about a lot of interesting things about their life and where they are and where they're going. And if you don't do that, then your questions are meaningless. And all of those questions were basically shut down ones that didn't lead anywhere. But that's my thoughts on targets. I do miss all of you. I will be back next week. And I hope everybody is well and fine. And who knows, maybe if there's a good enough movie made about this, something will happen. But until then, take care and be good. And yeah, I'm glad to do this podcast, and I'm grateful for it. And it's really amazing that there's so many movies out there that we've done where it's just so, it's disturbingly good how movies can really get a pulse on something that's the culture even over 40 years ago. It's amazing. So thank you very much, and everybody have a lovely evening. I continue to be Trish. Thank you. Goodbye.